It's over. It's all over. The NFL football season is officially done. Super Bowl 60 commenced with the Seattle Seahawks dominating the New England Patriots in a 29-13 win that really showed a lot about the Seattle Seahawks. It also showed a lot about the New England Patriots in terms of two of the better teams, maybe the two best teams matched up, but the Seattle Seahawks were the superior team. They walk away with it. You have a team that dominated from start to finish. Their defense was terrific. They battered and bruised Drake May. Drake May was overwhelmed by what I thought was an excellent game plan and superb execution from Mike McDonald and his defense. They hit him. They confused him. They beat him up. And eventually they spit him up and they chewed him up and spit him out in a very dominant performance on defense. And then offensively, the Seattle Seahawks did what they've done primarily for most of the year, and people didn't talk about it. They ran the football effectively. Kenneth Walker had a 100-yard game, walks away with the Super Bowl MVP. And in a game in which Sam Darnold wasn't his best, he managed the game effectively enough for the Seattle Seahawks to go to the winner's circle. And there are going to be a lot of shows that break down the game, and I'll talk about the game and context, but I think we all saw, we saw what took place, a game in which we could stack these rosters up and we could line the players up. And if we played a game of duck, duck, goose, where we picked the best player and said, hey, you go to the side, I think if we looked at the end of that game, we would say that the Seattle Seahawks had far more talented players individually. They won almost every position group. And unless they messed it up, it was going to be hard for the Patriots to win it. Even though on this show, I picked the Patriots because I felt like they would be able to muck up the game enough to make it hard. And I expected that maybe Sam Darnold would come off that heater and turn it over. He didn't give them a chance. And because they didn't give them opportunities to win the game, they didn't gift wrap scoring chances, they didn't give them turnovers, they didn't blow assignments and those things, the Patriots had a tough time mustering enough offense to complement what I thought was a very good defensive effort for about 3+ quarters until finally they let go of the rope after that last defense, after the defensive score kind of put the game away, put it on ice, and kind of confirmed that the Seahawks were going to be the champs. But now that that is to bed, I'm going to do what a lot of executives would do at this moment after the Seahawks have been confirmed as the champion is you begin to look at what they've done, how they did it, how they're constructed, and what lessons can we learn from their construction to give ourselves a chance of building a champion next year. First thing that stands out to me when I look at the Seattle Seahawks in this game or whatever is like talent always prevails. And I know we'll talk about the different compositions of rosters and those things, but the Seattle Seahawks were the more talented team. And when you watch them over the course of the year, you could rank them 1, 2, or 3 for most of the year in terms of where they stacked among the 32. This was a team that played a dominant brand of football, particularly on defense. They were terrific at the line of scrimmage. They were exceptional in the secondary. And then they made enough plays at the second level at linebacker to be able to get it done. On offense, they had Offensive Player of the Year in Jackson Smith and Jigba. You had a quarterback who's led his team to 31 wins over the past 2 seasons. You have a dominant running game where they ran almost 50-50 run-pass ratio. And the collective, Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet before his injury, man, they could really get after it. And then with the system that allowed their offensive line to probably play better than their individual parts, everything kind of rolled for the Seattle Seahawks because the talent and the tactics resulted in championship execution and championship results. To me, this is about how you build your roster to make sure that you always have not only the depth to be able to sustain a long season, but you have the talent to overwhelm opponents when it matters. And when I think about the talent that this team owns, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, because I want to start on the dark side because I think it's telling that they were able to win using a similar blueprint to the way that they dominated the 2010s with Pete Carroll and the Legion of Boom. When you talk about the dark side defense, as they've called themselves, man, they dominate because they have so many waves of talented bodies that can get after you. On the front line, you think about what they were able to do with Leonard Williams and Byron Murphy, Chinna Nwosu, DeMarcus Lawrence. They had Jaron Reed pop in and make some plays. Boye Mafe step up and do some things. I mean, they threw big body after big body after big body and elite pass rusher after elite pass rusher at the Patriots and wore them down. And even though throughout the course of the year, they didn't have a guy that had double-digit sacks, the collective, the sum of the individual parts made it where you had to talk about this defense and this pass rush being a suffocating unit that really made quarterbacks uncomfortable. They eliminated run games, and they forced teams to play on their terms. What's interesting about all of those guys that I talk about, you talk about top 1, 2, or 3 picks, meaning first, second, or third round picks, comprise most of their defensive line. And when you think about the defensive fronts and how everyone talks about wanting to be a line of scrimmage team, few are willing to throw the dollars or the draft picks at those guys to ensure that every time they walk out onto the field, that defensive front line holds an advantage over the offensive line. The Seattle Seahawks did that, and it paid dividends for them in their performance. Now, let's go to the back end, the secondary. When you think about what they have in the back end, Nick Emenwari, Devin Witherspoon, who put on an absolute show. It was like a showcase game for him where he showed that, not only can I cover, but I can blitz and I can be very effective blitzing. Those guys can do it. Kobe Bryant in the back end, Julian Love in the back end. They basically have a secondary that are full of players with cornerback skills, but they can play other positions as they've moved to a team that is a little positionless as they talk about the construction of their team, meaning they have a bunch of hybrid players that can fill multiple roles. And because Mike McDonald is a great conceptual teacher, it really works out. But to me, it is their overwhelming talent that led them to this Super Bowl win, this championship chase. And if I am an executive, I got to make sure that we can talk about a lot of things, but we're going to just take the best players and put together the best teams by being the best at whatever's available. Meaning we're going to take the best players whenever it's available in the draft. I'm not going to take a need and just simply fill a need. I'm going to make sure that every pick in every round, I am taking a player that is a really good player, and I'll worry about filling those needs later. And I know people say that's easy to say, but harder to do. But if you're a team that believes in building strength on strength, that's what you do. Because if you have enough talent where your strengths are so overwhelming that it doesn't matter what your weaknesses are, it is rare that you can lose a game because you can keep the opponent on your terms as opposed to having to yield to their terms. And if you do that, you're going to win. The other part that I would say executives and coaches will take from this after paying attention to talent and how talent prevails is you can win a lot of games when you don't beat yourself. And I know people will say, well, that's Captain Obvious. Like if you don't beat yourself, of course you're going to win. But it's one of those things that you hear coaches utter all the time. Let's not beat ourselves. Let's make sure that we don't give the game away. However you want to say that same phrase in your own terms, coaches say that each and every week. They say it every day when they stand in front of the team. But few are able to live up to that. For the Seattle Seahawks, what's remarkable to me is when you look at their numbers coming into this game, regular season, they were second in the league in giveaways. Second in the league. I think they had 28, 29 giveaways. Sam Darnold was number 1 in the league when it came to giveaways, 20 giveaways this season. But in the postseason, Seattle didn't have any turnovers. Sam Darnold didn't have any turnovers. They didn't give the ball away. They forced the opponent to drive the length of the field outside of, just complete mess ups where they kind of ran into a Rams team where the quarterback was on a heater. They dominated the action because they made people drive the length of the field. They didn't give them the cheap scores that some teams concede when they turned it over. When I look at how they were able to fix that problem, the bye week helped. They were able to put a greater emphasis on taking care of the ball. They were able to talk about playing championship ball, which means, hey, we're not going to turn the ball over. They were able to get the problem rectified. Sam Darnold was able to understand, let me understand the game, the situation, how my defense is playing. If they have the opponent under control, I don't need to take these unnecessary risks, because the only thing that can happen if I take a risk, I give the other team an opportunity to somehow score, because they've proven that they can't score on our defense. So if this was golf, yeah, I'm not going to pull the driver at the back. I'm going to hit my irons, and I'm going to make sure that I'm always in the fairway, and I'm going to give myself a chance to score. That's basically what the Seattle Seahawks did. They didn't turn it over. They made the opponent drive the length of the field, and those things worked. What they did in the Super Bowl, they also eliminated the pre-snap and foolish penalties. One, in the Super Bowl, they typically don't call a lot of penalties, but two, they didn't do anything stupid. They were onside. They knew how to line up. They didn't give them the cheap 5 yards that some teams do by not being focused or locked in. They also didn't engage in any of the silly stuff pre and post snap that would get you these taunting penalties. So when you eliminate the turnovers, you eliminate the pre-snap penalties and the foolish penalties, that gives you a chance, because you're not giving up yards or giving up scoring opportunities. So that was essential. Didn't give up big plays. Kept the ball in front. Mike McDonald talked about they played a too high shell. They were going to rush with 4. That 4 is going to be off of simulated pressure or whatever, but they're not going to give away the big plays. We talk about turnovers, penalties, and explosive plays. You eliminate those things, you're going to win. And the Seattle Seahawks did that. Too high shell, stopped the running game with basically 7-man boxes. They were able to do it. 6 and 7-man boxes. You're not supposed to be able to do that, but they did, because they were so locked in. They knew exactly what the plan was, and they were committed to not giving up the explosive plays. Even if the run game was a little leaky early, they felt like they would control the game enough that they're not going to drive the length of the field on a 15-play, 80-yard drive where they run it 11 out those 15 times. They knew that at some point they would get a stop. They would get something that pushed you behind the chains, and eventually Drake May would have to throw against a sticky defense that was, man, they were lights out with their pass rush and their coverage. Final thing, no kicking game errors. This was a game about the kicking game, playing field position. Think about the amount of times that the New England Patriots the New England Patriots were pinned inside the 5-yard line, inside the 10-yard line. The odds are significantly low that you can drive 90-plus yards to score a touchdown without messing it up with a self-inflicted mistake. Because the Seattle Seahawks were so good in the kicking game, where there's kickoff punts, field goals, they gave themselves the best chance to win, because they can control the action with defense and just wait for those favorable opportunities to put points on the board. Last thing about that, not beating themselves, they didn't beat themselves also because they took the scoring advantages, the scoring chances that were there in the red zone at a time where everyone is bypassing the opportunity to take almost like the sure 3 points. They didn't mess around with it. They just kept stacking points, 3, then another 3, then another 3. And before you look up, man, they have a 9-0 advantage, but it felt like it was enormous. It felt like there was no way that the Patriots were going to climb back in it. And when you have that sense as a coach, you don't give them any life. You just continue to chip away at it. And eventually you can get the big game-changing play that allows you to create the separation in these moments. And they got that when Nwosu was able to take back that fumble for a touchdown. Next thing that evaluators will take is, look, the quarterback position is critical, but environment matters more than anything else. And we can talk about the talent being necessary, whether they have arm talent, arm strength, do they have the IQ and those things, but it's the surroundings that impact the quarterback more than any other position on the field. And when I look at Sam Darnold, I think about a couple things that showed up. One, the scheme and the playmakers were perfect for him, meaning Clint Kubiak, having worked with him in San Francisco, having been able to take that intel when he came back and they reconnected in Seattle, building an offense that worked specifically for him. Play action, bootlegs, movement passing game, vertical shots, intermediate crossing routes over the middle of the field, all things that played to Sam Darnold's strengths. Even though he can struggle at times, sometimes with his accuracy and ball placement, we saw a very aggressive and decisive Sam Darnold playing in a system that he understands, because he spent the last 3 years in a variation of the system. So the environment matters. When we talk about a guy who was the 3rd overall pick, who quickly flamed out in New York, bounced around Carolina, San Francisco, Minnesota, respectively, before landing in Seattle, you're talking about someone who defied the odds. You don't go to 5 teams in 8 years and find a way to become a champion, but he did. And that is a testament to his talent and his toughness. He was talented enough as a top 5 pick to always be the franchise quarterback, but he had the mental toughness to endure the struggles, to get to the other side, to be equipped with the experience needed to eventually get the Seattle Seahawks over the line. So for Sam Darnold and watching his ascension to maybe top 10 status, evaluators are going to take a greater look at the environment that the quarterback is placed in and maybe not move off of quarterback so quickly, but maybe try to continue to spin the wheel to see if you can find the right quarterback whisperer, the right system to maximize who you think that quarterback is based on what you project the ceiling to be during those draft evaluations or free agent evaluations that every team has to make. But before I continue to talk about like the team and the Seahawks and how everyone is going to copy what they've done, I got to give you a little behind the scenes on general manager John Snyder. I'm going to say this because John Snyder is someone that I'm indebted to. When I was a player with the Green Bay Packers, well, before I even signed with the Green Bay Packers, John Snyder was a lower level personnel assistant who called me every week after I got cut from the Buffalo Bills. I'm a wide receiver. I was a second-round pick. Didn't work out for me in Buffalo. I go into a workout in Green Bay. In the middle of the workout, they asked me to stop doing wide receiver drills. They give me some DB drills to do. And based on that workout, the Green Bay Packers began to talk to me about playing DB. John Snyder would call me every week and ask if I would be willing to make the change, if I would switch over and say, hey, man, it's coming. We're going to sign you. We're going to sign you. We're going to sign you. Eventually, I signed with the Packers. I played wide receiver the rest of that year. I'm on the active roster, but I'm basically a practice player. And then the next offseason, I switch over to DB. But it was such a great thing for me because I not only got a chance to meet him, but I got a chance to meet Ron Wolf because he's the general manager of the team. And a lot of that connection and influence that I watched as a player with the Green Bay Packers, who eventually won a Super Bowl. I was on that roster for the first 8 games of that Super Bowl run in '96. I was able to see the influence and impact that he had on that team. But later, I was able to reconnect with John Snyder in Kansas City as a player, but later as a scout when he got the job in Seattle. I worked for 3 years for him there, and I was able to see all of the influence that Ron Wolf had on him and how he continued to grow and eventually become the general manager that's put this together. And the thing that I can say about the Seattle Seahawks under Snyder, man, they are the same in terms of what they value when Ron Wolf was with the Green Bay Packers. Size and speed is everything. There are dimensions that they won't negotiate or budge on when it comes to how they build their team. Every position has a criteria of like traits that the players must possess or they won't be on their board, meaning height, weight, arm length, speed, explosiveness, vertical, all those things are factored into it. And what you get when you have strict standards in terms of the type of players that you want physically is you have a team that trots out there like Seattle did that looks like a heavyweight contender. Having watched this team up close when I was in Jacksonville working on the sidelines, the Seattle Seahawks coming to the building, when you see them, man, they're just built differently. They're built like a heavyweight team in terms of how big and massive they are on the front line, how explosive they are on the perimeter, the dynamic traits that some of their skill positions players possess. All of those things are because you have strict standards when you're evaluating, and you only bring those people that check off those boxes onto your roster. As Ron Wolf would say, if you start making exceptions, you'll have a team full of exceptions. So you have to toe the line on what you want on your team, how you want your team to be built. And if we build it this way, we will have a team that overwhelms people with our size, toughness, speed, and physicality. That's what the Seattle Seahawks have done. So that is one thing. Another thing that I saw them do is you can't be afraid to trade for marquee players. You think about the trades that the Seattle Seahawks has made in the last couple of years. Leonard Williams coming on board from the New York Giants. They get a veteran player on the interior that is a dominant player, a Pro Bowl caliber player for them. They make a midseason trade this year for Rashid Shaheed to give them a big-time playmaker in the kicking game and an explosive option on the perimeter. You see how he paid dividends. You saw what he was able to do in a couple games this year to really set the tone for the Seattle Seahawks. You cannot be afraid to make these moves. And though a lot of people will talk about, hey, we are a draft and develop team, you got to make bold moves if you're going to be able to do it. Now, you have to have the blessing of ownership that when some of those moves don't go your way, you can move off of them without consequence. But if you're going to swing for the fences, you have to be able to strike out some. And the Seattle Seahawks ownership, they have given John Snyder the freedom to take big swings. And because those big swings have paid off, particularly this year, that's why they're Super Bowl champions. The other part that I would say that is certainly a Ron Wolf influence is always kick the tires on talented quarterback prospects. Now, I know this because Ron Wolf had told me this directly, that Al Davis, who Ron Wolf learned from with the Raiders for a long time, always believed that you always kick the tires on dismissed first-round talents. And the reason why you kick the tires on those guys is because if someone is drafted in the first round, there's a level of talent there. Your job is to explore if a new environment, a new voice can unlock the potential that may not have showed up in another place. When it comes to quarterbacks in particular, you always bring a first-round quarterback in the building just to see if there's something that you can squeeze out of them that didn't come out of them in their first or second location. So when you think about this relates directly to Sam Darnold and why they felt so strongly about bringing him in. Sam Darnold, third overall pick in 2018, didn't work out in New York, didn't work out in Carolina, did a great job as a backup in San Francisco where he flashed during preseason, goes to Minnesota, wins 14 games, but it fell apart down the stretch. Well, first round pick, a lot of talent. You've seen the ceiling and flashes, just hasn't worked out consistently in those other spots. Well, maybe new environment, another voice, find a system that has worked successfully for him. San Francisco, Minnesota, now Seattle. Clint Kubiak was with him in San Francisco, so he knows him well. The system is very similar to what they did in Minnesota. So we've seen him at his best operate within a system that we're running. We may move off of Geno Smith. Geno Smith wants money, maybe not fit the culture that we have. Let's roll the dice and see if Sam Darnold can make this happen. At the time, I'm going to be honest with you, it was a risky deal because Geno Smith had played at a Pro Bowl level. However, the conviction that you have that you got the right environment, the right ecosystem to allow a quarterback to thrive makes you bold enough to go after it. Bold moves matter, and they were bold enough to kick the talent and to kick the tires on a very talented quarterback who has paid dividends for them throughout the season, and particularly in the postseason when they needed him to take his game up a notch against the Rams in the NFC Championship game. It's because they were bold enough to project that he could be a star in their system, even though he may not be a superstar in the league. Last thing, and this is always something that Ron Wolf would do with the Green Bay Packers, and it's something that John Snyder has done with the Seattle Seahawks. Veterans matter. And the reason why you want vet players that have the right intangibles and leadership skills, clever, like specifically placed in certain position groups, is because these guys may be maybe on the decline physically, but they offer so much mentally. I think about Cooper Kupp, a division rival playing for the Rams, a guy who was a Triple Crown winner, a guy who had been a Super Bowl MVP, who was, dismissed from the Los Angeles Rams. They didn't think he could play anymore. But he offered so much, one, because he's from the Pacific Northwest, because they did a lot of intel on him, they were easily able to do the background research to see what he brings to the locker room. Bringing him into the locker room changed everything. Not only his influence and impact on Jackson Smith and Jigba, which has been well documented, knowing Cooper Kupp, having watched him, having worked Nike camps with him, and having been like around him to listen to him teach high school receivers how to do certain things. When we worked together years ago, Redondo Beach, he came in camp and taught all these guys how to run routes, was very active and involved with them. It was amazing to watch. I only can imagine what he was able to do on a daily basis to influence Jackson Smith and Jigba. JSN talked about how Cooper would impress upon him the need to focus on the process, not the result. Pour in every day, get better every day, and let's just see what this thing looks like in the end. Just that alone in helping JSN become Offensive Player of the Year is one thing, but it's how selfless and how he sacrificed his game to make it better for others, whether it's blocking, whether it's being the clear out guy, whether it's being a guy that every now and then on third down, they come to me, and being reliable and dependable. All that mattered. And it allows the rest of the team to quickly buy in to what they're talking about, and being a 12 as one type team where, look, everyone has to operate as one, get rid of the ego, let's play, let's focus, let's function at a high level. That is what a great veteran can do. You can say the same thing about DeMarcus Lawrence. Whatever you may have thought about DeMarcus Lawrence in Dallas, like, hey, can he get it done? Is it over with? Man, he is a different player in a Seattle Seahawks uniform. For John Snyder to go and get him and know that, hey, he's going to have this kind of impact on Byron Murphy, how Leonard Williams, also a vet, can have that impact on the younger players that they have in there. Just understanding this is what my roster needs. This is what my team needs. We need a few veterans that we can sprinkle in here and there that will give us the leadership, give us the expertise, and share their experiences that will allow us to go to the next level. To me, that is terrific team building. So John Snyder deserves a lot of credit when it comes to that. But let's talk about the coach. And I would say, man, maybe the biggest factor in terms of why the Seattle Seahawks are who they are and why they had confetti falling on their shoulders on Sunday night. Mike McDonald. And at a time when everyone is saying that you can't, like, it's about the offensive errors, about the offense. You got to get an offensive play caller because that matters with the quarterback. You got to pair this guy with the quarterback, and you never can move on. It's the media narrative that goes on and on and on. And what you do when you fall into that narrative is, man, you fail to appreciate how many good coaches are on the defense side of the ball, and how a great defensive coach also understands offense. And moreover, how the leadership that a coach can bring can impact and influence the way this team not only eventually progresses as a championship team, but how they can overwhelm people when you have the right guy at the front of the room. And Mike McDonald, you not only have like a guy that brings a defensive acumen that is next level, but you have a guy who really is mature beyond his years and experience in the league. This is someone that spent some time with the Baltimore Ravens. He goes to Michigan as a coordinator. Then right away, he is ready to go, and he's ready to be an NFL head coach. Quickly, after a short stint with the Baltimore Ravens, 2 years as defense coordinator, he goes to Seattle. Man, he is ready to go. He's rocking and rolling, and he has it going. And I think the best thing that he offers, not only in terms of being a defensive play caller, but how he's been committed to build a team that is connected and together. We've seen the clip go viral where he talked about how he wanted this team to envision themselves being in the championship game in the Pacific Northwest, playing that game and going through that and talking about that, how he enacted and coined the phrase, hey, mission over BS. Man, we want people that are committed to the mission, or they're gone. If you're not committed to the mission, we don't have time to deal with the BS, and we move on from you. Those players have been removed, and they got better when they removed those players, because now everyone on this team is connected and buys into what they believe in Seattle. But man, let's get to the X's and O's and what Mike McDonald was able to do with this team. Next level defensive coordinator who has all the tricks and the gadgets to make life miserable for offensive coordinators. And at a time when we talk about the offense dominating the league and how the brilliant play callers in this league on the offensive side of the ball have a significant advantage over the defense. Look, man, Mike McDonald threw the book at those guys and said, no, it doesn't operate like that. My defensive intel and ingenuity actually gives us a significant advantage. And at a time where the franchise is synonymous with the Legion of Boom, the dark side has completely not wiped the memory away, but it certainly put them on the back burner when we talk about the great defenses within the franchise. When I think about Mike McDonald and I think about this defense, it's not only the simplicity that created chaos, but I would say is his ability to create a defense that has positionless players that make life miserable for the opposition. When I talk about positionless players, what I'm talking about are guys that can handle multiple roles, and that allows us to expand expand our personnel packages to make, I would say, to create chaos, organized chaos. Meaning I have DBs that play like linebackers. I have corners that play like safeties. I have outside edge rushers that can go inside. I can do a bunch of different things. In doing that, I can change the picture for the offense by switching the people or by switching people around, by changing personnel groups, by doing a bunch of different things that, as a Seahawk, easy for us, hard for you. And looking at that game on Sunday, you saw that Devin Witherspoon playing in the slot, but blitzing, having like 4 hits on the quarterback, being able to have a sack, changing the game because he was so disruptive on the inside. Well, that's part of the positionless ball that we're talking about. But the only way that you can do this and play this positionless ball, man, you have to have a defensive play caller that can take, I would say, complex concepts and simplify them enough where everyone can digest them and they can execute them on the biggest stage. That's what Mike McDonald has been able to do. But not only was Devin Witherspoon, we saw throughout the year with Nick Emmanwori. I talked about the secondary featuring a bunch of corners that are now playing safety, and Kobe Bryant and Julian Love. When you have all these guys that can play multiple roles, you create a multifaceted defense that is very challenging for a young quarterback to face because everyone can move around and do different things. They can exchange roles without changing personnel packages. They can do one thing one week and another thing the next week, and the quarterback never knows. And it's not just the quarterback, it's the offensive play call. And then when you think about the simulated pressures and the way they use the X's and O's to only rush 4, but to create the illusion of a chaotic blitz for a young quarterback like Drake May, it was just overwhelming, and you could see it on his face. So when you have the tactics, you have the talent, you have a team that is inherently tough, and they have the tenacity to finish the job, that's what is needed to be a champion. So as I think about Mike McDonald, and I think about him putting the final pieces of the puzzle together and how he got this team to play as one, and on defense, 12 as one, man, it's not only about leadership and the schemes, it's about the overall understanding of the game and what is needed to win at a high level. So then we talk about winning at the high level. I got to go to FanDuel Sportsbook and see, can the Seattle Seahawks do it again? According to the book, they're talking about plus 750 on the Seattle Seahawks to go back to the Super Bowl 61, which will be in LA, to see if they can do it again. Now, I don't know. I like those odds, but I got to say it, I'm a homer for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and those odds are also plus 2,000. So I know that we're talking about a long shot for the Jags to do it, but certainly if they look at the Seattle Seahawks and see that this was a team that coming into the season, I think the odds were 60-1 on them winning the Super Bowl, and they were able to get it done. There's some hope for my Jags eventually being able to do it. But I think there are a lot of people that will look at the Seattle Seahawks. They will study them on tape. They will ask around, talk to some of their buddies that work there. They'll look at how they operate in the combine and the draft and those things. And they're going to try and copycat some of those things to see if they can put their teams in a position to be a champion next year. Those are some of the lessons that I learned. Going forward, we're going to close the book on the season, and it's my favorite time of year. It is draft season. We have the combine coming up in a few weeks. I can't wait to dig into it. We have mock drafts that we're about to discuss and get to it, top 5 lists, big boards, all those things we're going to have on the Bucky Brooks Show. Let's make sure you tune in. Make sure you rate, subscribe. Tell a friend to tell a friend about the cool things that we're doing on the show. Tell a friend to tell a friend about the cool things that we're doing on Bleav. But make sure you come back later in the week as we begin to spin it forward and talk about next year and how the draft is going to impact the teams that we're looking for next season. Until then, I'm Bucky Brooks, and I'm out.